Are we recording?
Yep, we're
Okay.
on live.
So I will take the report as read. Unfortunately, it's just me here today. This strategic review into camping was done with the support of Nadine Spring, who's the manager of our customer support centre, and also our external consultant who was Paul MacArthur, and he interviewed and worked with a lot of our staff to deliver this. So I apologise that you've got me presenting this to you instead. So the purpose of the review, I guess just before that, Kelly's Bay and Glinks Gully, we lost the two operators of those two campgrounds. What that highlighted to us within KDC was that strategically, there were a lot of different teams that were responsible for campgrounds. So we had Taharoa Domain under the Customer Services Centre, we had Glinks and a few other under Property and Commercial under John, and then we had Kelly's Bay and a few others that were under our Parks team. So in terms of consistency, level of service and operations, we really didn't have a good view or understanding of what we had in our portfolio or the way that they were being operated. So that's what triggered the start of this review, so that we could have a view of all our campgrounds, what are their issues, what's the structure, how are they managed, and what state they're in, but also come up with some options for council's approach to managing those campgrounds. So we've got a few different models. We've got some council operated campgrounds. So that's Taharoa Domain or Kaiwi Lake. So there's two there. There's Pine Beach, which is the big campground at the main beach. And then there's Promenade Point, which is further around. Glinks Gully as well, which we have recently closed. We've got some commercial leases. So Mangawhai Head, Selwyn Park is the Dargaville campground, and also Bailey's Beach. Excuse me. And then we've got community leases, licensed occupiers, and so they're in place at Pahi Domain, Tinapai, Potoa, Marine Hall, and also Kelly's Bay, which we've just recently closed. And in addition, while we were doing the review, we also identified that there is overnight camping for caravans available at the museum or Potoa Tarangi Harding Park. So that's what we currently have in terms of our campgrounds across the district. So we need to make sure all of our campgrounds are compliant, and so there's the Campground Act there's also the Health and Safety Act, and so there's Taumata Arawai ensured that we provide appropriate drinking water or not. So the process that we used to do the strategic review, we basically did a summary of the current situation, identified all of the campgrounds, their physical attributes, how they were being managed, the condition of them and whether or not they were compliant. Then we looked at options available, so whether or not we should continue to play a supporting role or whether or not we need to amend the operating model. We defined a clear framework for the assessments so that each campground could be assessed equally, and Paul and Nadine made recommendations for the executive team to consider, which we'll also bring to you today. So the first one, Taharoa Domain, it's open all year round, and like I said, there's two sites there, Pine Beach and Prom Point. Promenade Point, I would say, is definitely more of a dock site, so it doesn't have toilets, laundry facilities, things like that. There are toilets up on the road, but it's a real basic facilities. Pine Beach is got a lot more there. It's a strategically important site, commercially viable. We do operate it, so in 2020 it came in-house for council for operations, and my team took it on, and we've been operating it since 2020, which I think has been quite successful. We share governance with Te Roroa and Te Kuihi through the Taharoa Domain Governance Committee. It is not fully compliant, so we have exemptions in place. We have a resource consent for water takes from the lake, and there's currently no drinking water available out at Pine Beach. So some of the recommendations you'll see there is to, I should go back, is to move away, being that this is the only campground that council is actually right in there operating and employing staff, is to move away from that model. And we would potentially reach out to Te Roro in the first instance. But we really need to make sure that our campgrounds become compliant either via investment, capital investment, or whether or not we want to reduce the level of service or continue to gain exemptions. And also we need to review the water supply, because whether we need improved signage around the fact that our water is not potable, and so to be really clear with people not to drink it, or we need to provide drinking water by upgrading those.
Question. Thank you, Mr. What is the asset rating for Kaiwi Lakes? Is it 1 to 6? You have a table there.
The
asset rating. So
the asset rating, so it's in great condition. It's in excellent condition.
So it's number 1, isn't it? Okay.
Right, next was Glinks Gully. So the Glinks Gully was only open over the summer, small and remote. It's in deteriorating facilities, and it's likely to fail within 5 years without significant investment. And so the recommendation was to undertake expressions of interest, which we've done. And then obviously you just saw it in the last item in PEX that was presented to you. Mangawhai Heads, so just around the corner here, it's open all year round. It's obviously of strategic importance. It's commercially leased. It's in excellent condition, fully compliant, and actually provides us a revenue stream as well. So the only recommendation there is just to make sure that the coastal margin remains accessible for all users, and it's not just restricted to campers, or given the impression that it's creating restrictions in that space. Pahi, again, it's in excellent condition, fully compliant. It's operated by a not-for-profit, and it's open all year round. The recommendations is to either look at ways that we can better support them, provide them information about how to become a charity, and just review some of those activities around who manages the trees and things like that.
Can I ask you what the inconsistencies are between the management agreement and the current operational management?
Management agreement and the current operational agreement? So the current operational agreement will be in place, and I guess we need to review our management agreement in the next 24 months, which will be why that's highlighted on there.
I've just got to understand how this works. So when people go to camp at Pahi, they pay a fee. How does that flow through?
It doesn't come to council. It'll go to it'll go to the owner, so the not-for-profit incorporated society. All of the fees and charges will go there.
John, if you're going to help, would you mind coming over so the others can hear on the phone, on the microphone? Sorry.
Yes, if I could just add on. Just recently met with the Pahi Reserve Society. And so their agreement is council's appointed them to manage the reserve on our behalf. It did so back in not long after Kaipara was set up, because previously there was, I believe, a domain board that ran that campground. So it's never been run by council. So the management agreement is very old and it does need refreshing. That's referring to. But the campground does get a little bit of support from council. We pay them to clean the public toilets on the reserve, basically, and do some mowing.
Here is mine.
I
will stay there because I'll read some more questions.
You never know, John. Stay beside me. It's better if we wing it together. Tinopai, obviously this is really valued by regulars. It's in good condition and it is compliant, and it's operated under lease to the Tinopai Community Hall. It does require that group to cover all of the outgoings around repairs, maintenance of buildings, infrastructure and grounds. So we really need to review that lease to make sure that it's fit for purpose. And encourage them to register a charity if they can get potential benefits, but really looking at how we can support them a bit further. We also need to look at ways we can transfer some of the operational work that they're doing there over to our parks team. Kelly's Bay, so obviously that's currently closed, but used to be open year round. It had very basic facilities. It was compliant and it is in good condition. And obviously in the last PEX item, you would have seen the licensed occupied, which was as per the recommendation that we should go out and follow that process. Kotor, open year round, excellent condition, fully compliant, well used. So yeah, I guess just considering further support that we could have around marketing and tourism and things like that. Selwyn Park, so that's Dargaville Holiday Park, open all year round, excellent condition, fully compliant. We're not looking to make any changes there either. Bailey's Beach, the same, excellent condition, fully compliant, operated by commercial lease. We're not looking to do anything different there either. And then Kotor Torangi Harding Park, so this is the camper van. We did identify that the motorhome camping basically could possibly trigger the requirements for the Campground Act because they are charging 2 or more families and partying. So they've got actual charges and campground fees in place, which means that they probably do fall under the Campground Act. So we really need to do an assessment around whether or not that should pull in, because if it is a campground, that does trigger safety, security, lighting, toilets, potable water, like a whole lot of things.
Can I go back to Podium Point? Who are is that a community group of trust or something that runs it?
Kotor Point, Marine Hall.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's a community lease.
Corporate society.
1st of July.
Councillor Lambert?
The Harding Park one, there's a fee for running a campground charged by the council to the entity. And their concerns was that the amount of the small amount of campers they have up there doesn't even pay half the yearly fee. So there's a little bit of a dilemma there. It's too close to the other one.
MCA one.
Yeah, to ask them to take it over. So we've got a little bit of a dilemma there because they might actually look at closing that if they can't work something out. But that's something we've got to work through.
Well, the other thing is that it's actually not provision for in the reserve management plan either. Is that camping there's no provision for camping as an activity within the reserve management plan. So that is something that the committees
Not provided for
would
in
need
the
to
LTI line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got a dumping station up there too, have you not, for the camper vans? I think there is. And a water refill there. So a lot of the camper vans do go up there. They look at the facilities and some of them stay overnight. So we'll work our way through that anyway. So, yeah.
I think as Kaipara becomes the place to be and there's an increased flow, you might find that that would be an ideal place to have them extend their degree of influence from down below there if they're managing that well. How does that work with our community? How's that organised? The motorhome outfit leases that piece of land at the bottom too, do they?
No, they own it.
They don't own it. They own it.
They own it outright.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the other one's run by the museum, isn't it? Up the Harding Park.
Yeah. Councillor Vincent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Because I did some investigation of this question of Dargaville becoming a motorhome friendly town, which is our presenter made reference to, and there's about half a dozen criteria in terms of access to medical facilities, supermarket, dump station, potable water supply available. And I think we scored on 5 out of 6. Just that one further thing of like that there is potable water available up at the museum, but I think the tap is too close to the toilets to something like that, or it could be down at the waterfront. Similar sort of question, whether it's by the public toilets there. So something that might accompany this direction would be like seeking to achieve motorhome friendly status.
Yeah.
Is on their list of, added to the list of 50 odd towns in the country.
Yeah.
Might be a good thing to do.
Yeah, councillor Lambert.
The only other thing against that is the one down at the old Sand
Yeah,
Shackleton's Hut. There's not safe pedestrian access in the town.
I think,
It's hugely and dangerous there.
I think looking ahead, I'm quite excited about Dargaville's prospects because it's becoming ever closer to Auckland in terms of its roading access. Already the influence of the Puhoi to Warkworth has become significant. And once we get that next one through Dome Valley, people are going to turn left a lot more often and go through Matakawe, Dargaville.
And the hovercraft is coming as well.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions. Going back on, we've had 2 or 3 parks that are non-compliant or have non-compliant elements. Is that potentially a significant cost for us to, if we were to go into arrangement to upgrade them?
Glen Scully will take a bit of investment to become compliant, but not a huge investment. It's not massive.
Mainly on laundry and some lighting, I think.
Laundry and safety lighting, and marking the
That's
space.
operational.
It's very minor. Kaiwi Lakes at Tahoe Domain, slightly different. So we're not compliant in terms of ablutions, so toilets, showers, laundry and drinking water. We do have in the long-term plan, you will have seen in our discussions for Kaiwi Lakes and Tahoe Domain, I think there's about $1.3 million there to look at improving and updating the ablution blocks and toilets, which means that we've got to look at our wastewater system and where we're putting our waste, and then also look at how we're taking water from the lake and how we can minimise that as much as humanly possible. So there's quite a bit of investment at Tahoe Domain.
Yes, okay, I understand. There could be a lot of investment, quite a recent investment there, but it could also be a negotiation with someone who will take over lease, for instance.
Correct. Yeah.
That was the model we used with Monthly Heads. They had to make significant investment when they got the lease.
Yeah.
So that takes me to my next steps, I guess. So the next steps would be the items that you've just seen. We went out for expressions of interest prior to Christmas for Glints and Kelly's Bay. And as a result, we got the PEX item that you considered just before. We, as part of our internal organisational review, looking at the structure of where campgrounds sit in our structure so that they're not under 3 different general managers, that there's consistency and a good understanding and approach to how we deliver campgrounds or how we deliver their licences. We're also looking at increasing funding and resourcing and support to the parks team as part of our long-term plan, which you would have seen that investment there. And obviously John's done a lot of work to review some of those community leases, which will be coming up. So there's more work for John to do in that space. And then the next steps are we will need to take these recommendations to the Tahoe Domain Governance Committee and also to the Harding Park and Poitou-Tarangi Governance Committee to consider some of those camping activities, the reserve management plan, or look at potential alternative operating models and whether or not there's interest in and a desire to do that. So those are the next steps that we'll be working through. I guess if any of those committees make a decision and their approach, those decisions will come to council for council to review and consider.
So I've got a question I need to ask you, John. With Kelly's Bay, for example, if we received a lease from the participant we had today at the meeting, do we have any liabilities with health and safety, or is that passed to them?
As a landowner, there's always the requirement to work with others to manage health and safety. But I guess that to the extent that we can, a lease puts as much arm's length as council possibly can, because they have exclusive possession of the site. So council's still got some requirements to look at health and safety, how the operator might be managing it, but it's a lower level of involvement than you would if like, for instance, at Taharoa, where we're managing campground. So it's two extremes, if you like. So the least option is the lower requirement.
I mean, I'm not saying I would recommend a change because I don't have information. But I think council has enough information to know. But it's interesting to me that you've got an outfit that can offer us $10,000 lease when it's costing us 50 to hold it now. And in terms of our other campgrounds that we run, like Taharoa, would we be better? I mean, I can't answer the question until we look. You have private enterprises that would pay bigger return to council plus reduce our liability. It would be worth a look. Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we perhaps need to get back into more sort of first questions are like, should we be in this business anyway? And what are the potential, I didn't put in my questions, which was essentially
Benefits.
well, yeah, like there may be, are they all on reserve land or public?
Yeah.
They're all on council land, whether or not they're reserved or public,
I think basically they're all reserves.
all reserves.
Because I mean, if it was just have to be land in general title owned by the council, then one of the options is to sell it. And I think the report does show that the council owns about half the camping grounds in the district. So if our ones all disappeared, which I'm not saying shouldn't, there would still be camping grounds in that opportunity in the district. So why are we in this business?
Yep.
Is my first question. And I would have thought that strategic overview should address that question.
Well, it basically says that by council owning that land and provisioning it through licenses to occupy or commercial agreements, we're keeping the portfolio and the availability of accommodation accessible for tourists and domestic visitors. So basically, we're keeping the stock open.
And so how is that? I've just got to tease it out. So how is that of a benefit to our citizens, to our ratepayers?
Well, with the exclusion of campgrounds that we're actually investing in, the campgrounds currently don't have to contribute, but those resources are available to them, their family, their friends. Taharoa Domain would be the only one that we've, with their past anchor links, would be the one that we're majorly financially contributing to, but the rest of them either bring us revenue or they bring social tourism benefits.
Yeah, and I accept the validity of that. I just think we need to be explicit about it as to what the equation is that we're working on here, as to because it may be that there are some non-cash benefits to offset against cash costs. And also the other aspect that concerns me is the sleeping giant of maybe some major capital requirement in the future that we could be lumbered with somehow or other with one or more of these camping grounds.
So Taharoa definitely, and we're making allowance for that in the long-term plan, but none of the other campgrounds will be allowable.
Councillor Howard.
Is that reflected in what's in the 10-year plan? In terms of expected capital out in our camping grounds? Okay.
Subject to any decision you make because of this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back and talking about risks, liabilities. As I understand it, with Mangawhai Park, the current operator has put in some zoning facilities and things like that, but I think council own some of the ablutions and things. Is that right?
Yeah,
It's a scenario.
It's not unusual. It's a mixed model we've got there, is that the improvements that existed at the start of the lease are owned by council. And the lessee was required to add to that by its own investment. And that was I guess, the cost of giving them a 30-year lease on that site. But I say it's not an unusual circumstance where there's a mixed model of and Bailey's Beach is similar, where council owns some of the improvements and the lessee owns some of the improvements, for example. I think the one in Dargaville, the street, has a similar set of circumstances.
So we own aging.
So we're going to go.
Yeah. However, saying that, the terms of the lease require the leasee to maintain it and to return it to council in a good condition at the end of the lease. So any renewal that happens over the term of the lease, whether that's 15 or 20 or 30 years, is the responsibility of the leasee.
Councillor Larson, one last question.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Yes. Do we have certain figures on the profitability of the ground, say the past 5 years on average?
Yep, I can send that to you. I know that last year was the first year that we didn't require rates, so we delivered off revenue, but yeah, I can get that information to you.
Okay, all good? Okay, so there'll be a report coming back to council on this, so I'd like to move on for the sake of time. It's 3:45 now.
So do we need to take that extension of time?
Operating at.
No, this is not a meeting, it's a briefing. So look, we'll go to item 7. We're all over the place today, but item 7. We've got 3 items to go. Item 7, item 6, and then back to item 8, people.
7 January. 7 January.
Next item is the sign standards in cemetery, crematoria code of practice.
I'm not a picky.
Right, through you, Mr Mayor, we've got 3 items to go. We're going to push through these. I know it's been a long day already. It's getting hotter as well. So everybody has to drive up to this. So Shane, over to you.
Meeting tomorrow.
It's leases.
Yeah, is that it?
Kia ora koutou. This item, Virginia Smith was to present this item. She apologised she can't be here today, so I'm presenting it on her behalf. This is a relatively short item at this time of day. So just to recap, council determined to propose to the community 2 bylaws that allowed for a control structure in the bylaws. Those bylaws have now been consulted on, are being presented to council to a future council meeting to make those bylaws. We received no feedback on those bylaws. So essentially what the proposal was that those bylaws included the proposed control structure and the controls that are to be made under the bylaw. The controls, both controls for the science bylaw and the cemeteries and crematoria bylaw have been presented to elected members at 2 previous briefings. They have been further refined. As I think somebody introduced to you this morning, there was an error. Unfortunately, there was an admin error recognising attachment A versus attachment A for a previous briefing, and the old attachment A was attached to your agenda item. You've been distributed the new one. Attachment A. So the controls are to allow for the operational functioning of the matters that is addressed under these bylaws. And I received some questions yesterday about these matters, so I'll just talk to those. So I know it looks more complicated, but these control documents are designed to make life easier for our communities, because it gives certainty to staff dealing with these issues and it gives certainties to the community. So for example, if we have a community group who wants to put signs up regularly, that means that they can get a permit for repeat events for their signs. So they just need to get one permit for saying, we will put these signs up once every 2 months for our community event that we're holding in this community hall, and then they can get a permit for the whole year or for the period of time determined in agreement with the relevant officers who's providing the authorization. So the intent is to allow for a more clear and precise structure for permits for signs in council controlled land. A significant part of the review was about removing the confusion between Waka Kotahi owned or controlled land and council owned land. It is a little bit confusing because in 2010, the agency made a bylaw that required council to have responsibilities for roads up to the 70km/h speed limit. So we have to provide rules in the road reserve for those parts of the roads as well. So again, this is about clarifying those matters. In terms of the cemeteries, there was a query about a list of acceptable trees. We can provide that information in related information. So we can put a related information box in the code that says this is the trees, or provide a link to provide some more information to family members about which trees are acceptable. So it's absolutely not a problem. We can do that. I'm not sure if somebody else has answered it. There was a question about contractors mowing, but I understand from a colleague that question has already been answered about the frequency of mowing and rubbish removal by contractors. Yes. Has been answered? Great. So that leaves me to ask whether there's any feedback about the control documents.
Questions?
Feedback.
Councillor Lambert. Graffiti.
Yes, we've had an increase in graffiti. Now, is that deemed as a sign under the general conditions? Contain, display the sign owner's contact details are clearly legible, and everything else. So do we, or can we, use this bylaw to have an eradication program of graffiti around town? If not, how can we make this work? Because we appear to be a toothless line. The graffiti is growing around town. On several phone calls to several different people, apparently nobody can do anything about it.
Through the chair, no, this doesn't permit graffiti. This isn't a document that's designed to allow for unlawful actions. And graffiti, as I understand it, and excuse my ignorance on the matter, I'm not au fait particularly with graffiti, but it's unlawful defacing of people's property, both council and private people's property. Whether we could, I'm sure we could technically put a bylaw in place to prohibit graffiti, but I don't think that would necessarily provide any solutions to council.
It's not so much that enable the ability to stop it happening. It's a matter of getting rid of it once it's occurred.
So through you, Mr Mayor, the bylaw is not the mechanism to do that. That would be through the parks maintenance contract. We need to check. And it's not here at the moment, we'll need to check on what's included in that. Bearing in mind that we won't be responsible for graffiti off private property, it's just for council owned.
I'm sure they are a sign under the definitions here. And if they're not meeting the regulations, then they become illegal and we have the ability to get rid of them. I'm just putting it on.
Yeah, we'll follow that up. I don't think
we need something to do.
My understanding with graffiti is if you don't get on it early, it grows big time. You need to be able to wipe it out almost the next day you see it.
Yeah.
A lot of the problem we do have is dormant landlords or property owners where you can't get hold of them. So it becomes a major logistics exercise to try and find somebody. But if you have the power under bylaw to eliminate that, because it's a non-illegal sign, maybe a different way to skin a cat.
Through the chair, it is actually, the sign standards say that you need a permit for any sign. So even if the definition of a sign were to be deemed to apply to graffiti, it's not permitted on council property without a permit, so it's not permitted. Reminding elected members again that the ability to enforce bylaws made under the Local Government Act is very limited, and the only option for council is prosecution.
Yeah, so the answer here, I mean, for the sake of putting a bylaw to manage graffiti, which would take 18 months, it's not the right mechanism, is what I'm hearing from Shireen. However, we do need to check within the maintenance contract what our rules around graffiti. So I'll get that underway.
Sorry, I don't think you're seeing the picture here. It's not council land, it's a sign. But anyway, I'll carry on with that.
Can I just clarify, is it graffiti on private property?
Within view of the public, yes.
Private properties, we've got no responsibility over that whatsoever.
That's exactly what I'm saying. If it's an illegal sign, then we surely have an ability to get rid of it or action against it. But anyway, I'm looking for a way we can rather than a way we can't do things here. I'm trying to find a solution to it.
Don't just do it. Go ahead and do it.
Nobody's prepared to do it.
Anyway, yeah, carry on. Thank you.
All the options. Yeah, look, we should explore those options. I'm all for getting rid of graffiti as soon as it appears somehow. We can find a way to do that. Let's do it. Okay, let's move on. Sheree, have you got any other questions there for Sheree? Thank you.
Thank you.
To go. One is elected members' allowances and recovery of expenses, and stay where you are, Sheree. It's yours.
Try and find the presentation.
Second to last.
We're nearly there. Nearly there.
Last one will be
Meeting, right? Really?
code of conduct.
Of the new year.
Roger, what's to do?
Right. Thank you. So this is the fourth policy out of the 4 governance policies that are reviewed each triennium by council. The 3 ones were presented to council last year. This final one is the elected member allowances and recovery of expenses policy. Essentially, what happens is that a determination is issued by the authority every year, so which applies from the 1st of July to the 30th of June the following year. And what the purpose of the policy is to clarify what council will or won't do in terms of applying those determinations and covering any gaps. So the review found that the previous version of the policy reiterated elements of the determination. It's not appropriate to repeat content of the determination because as soon as the new determination is made, if it's new and different, that means your policy is out of date, which means you have to spend time reviewing it. So the intent of this new draft policy is to just provide policy positions on the relevant matters. As the item says, the revised policy to the largest extent reflects the existing policy. The only amendments that are proposed are to provide clarity about travel time. So there is a discrepancy between the understanding between travel time and travel vehicle kilometre allowances, and it's proposed to allow for vehicle travel time allowances as well as vehicle kilometre allowances to simplify the policy approach. So that's an extension of the policy, I guess, in one way. The other element is that on the Remuneration Authority seems to have a preference on their website that policies should be explicit about how the determinations should be approached in terms of qualifying elected members to apply to the authority for exemptions from restrictions on the payment of travel. So what the policy does is now explicitly say that elected members are able to apply for exemptions to the authority for those matters, and the authority is responsible for either agreeing to or declining that application for an exemption. So those are the 2 matters that are substantively different from the previous policy. The remaining matters are essentially the same. What I will say is that thanks to my colleagues for doing another fine tooth comb, we did find that the determinations are a bit tricky. They either give a dollar amount or sometimes they say up to an amount. And we caught, and Alana, my colleague, caught two of those there. In terms of the ITC consumables, it says up to $200. It doesn't say $200. So we're proposing to add some tweaks to it that says at the maximum amount. And similarly for hearings, it says up to $116 or $93. So we're proposing to add that in. So it's the payment is at the maximum amount of the determination rather than, so that's just clarifying, because that is the process as I understand it right now. That's what's happened. And it's just creates complete clarity for everybody dealing with the policy.
Sleep better tonight.
Question from councillor Larson.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks, Shireen. On page 6 of your new policy, draft policy, point 8, you're claiming expenses and allowances. Elected members must present all claims for approval each month and prior to the 30th of June for financial year. I understand previously there was a discrepancy between that and the determination. So is it a requirement of the determination that they must be presented for approval each month and they must be presented before the 30th of June for that financial year? For example, a person who fills out their expense claim on the 30th of June and doesn't get around to sending it in, what are the consequences for them?
So through the chair, the determinations, and off the top of my head, state that they apply for the matters incurred in that year. So technically, this is policy content that is not inconsistent with the determination. It's a policy of council that, in terms of processing claims, that they need to be processed within a timely fashion. So this is a carryover from the previous policy.
I realise that.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that if a person put their claim in after the 30th of June that they wouldn't be entitled to it, or that they would be entitled to it, but it is a preferred practice to have it lodged on that basis? It says one must. It's quite prescriptive.
Agree. So if council would, it's obviously also the CEO has his hand up.
Oh, no, sorry, it's not, this is going to put my hand up immediately. Through you, Mr Mayor. So yeah, look, this is kind of a normal practice in councils to ensure that the financial accounting for their financial year is held in their financial year. Like we do with all of our books, we close off and recognise all the costs in the previous financial year in that financial year. There has been a situation in the past where a councillor tried to claim for 3 years worth of expenses, I understand, from dredging it by memory cells in the past, and because of that statement in the policy wasn't able to, and that was confirmed with the Remuneration Authority. So that's kind of the principle behind it, making sure that the costs fall in the year that they are incurred, and to make sure that elected members present their expenses in a timely way, because remembering we publish the expenses every 6 months for the benefit of the public, and they have a right to understand what expenses are incurred by elected members too. So there's a little bit more to it than just a black and white cover.
My feedback is that I don't think we should use internal policy to override superior documents that provide an entitlement. So as you have with all types of accounting, everything doesn't get contained within a financial year, and you have bad debts and expenses that carry over and all sorts of things. So I think you should soften the wording here to say that this is preferred normal practice that occur, but that it's not absolutely prescriptive, because this is actually a subordinate document that's being used to trump a superior document. That's my feedback.
And if I may add, Mr. Mayor, I think the simple thing there is that something along the lines of, all claims submitted for approval at the end, in that last month of the year, by the 10th of July. 10th of the month following. It makes it very simple. It gives you a little bit of leeway, because everybody, to get everything done. It does read, it's pretty draconian. You got to do it prior to the 30th of June.
Councillor Lambert? Oh, no, Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, my feedback is I think we should leave it as it is. I think we're all grown-ups and I think we can all get our expenses and our forms in on time. And sure, it may be a lower form of document, but it actually means that if it means that our organisation can run smoother and the accounting processes can be followed, I think that's how it's always worked, and it shouldn't be a problem. And I agree that people shouldn't be able to suddenly remember that they haven't claimed for 3 years worth of expenses and throw things out. And I also agree that the transparency for our ratepayers is paramount. Thank you.
Councillor Lambert?
Yeah, going on to a different subject, 5.4, travel time and vehicle allowances. Now, I didn't mention this before, but it becomes very, very difficult calculation when we're trying to work out how much time we spend driving in the Kaipara district, maybe to travel to Whangarei for a allocated meeting, and how is this going to carry on with this bizarre setup we've got where we've booked in for appointments with the regional council, and we've got to calculate how much time we spend, or is it the first hour, the second hour? Can I use the time that travelled in the Whangarei district as my first hour and then only claim for the Kaipara one? I know where it came from, because there was occasions in the past where elected members had moved to a different city and were trying to claim their mileage back up here. So aware of what's come about, but I don't think it's very bizarre what we've got here.
I think from memory through you, Mr Mayor, sure you might have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's an exception to that for, like you say, the Civil Defence and Emergency Management Committee and Whangarei, you can claim your travel time for that as well.
It's been turned down.
We'll take that offline. I think there's an exception in the current policy.
Can I, so clause 5.4A says unless authorised prior by the mayor. So if it's authorised travel, it's claimable. Is that what you're going to say, Ilana?
Yes, so
That's the whole point.
yeah, so that clause that has been removed. And so if it's authorised travel, the mayor has authorised you to travel for regional meetings that you might be involved in. So yeah,
It's included.
No complicated calculation I've got to go through anymore.
Can I just be relaxed?
Which I'm sure you read in the agenda.
So the reason why, I mean, it's quite complicated, let's be honest. The Remuneration Authority makes it complicated too, with all respect to them, but it is what it is. Our auditors always go through elected member claims. So it's part of the annual report process. There's not a year that's gone by that they haven't. So I just want to stress how important that life admin is, because it is life admin.
So no.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a clarification in line with Councillor Lambert. If we make a mistake, because sometime I remember it happened to Councillor Lambert, it happened to me. You make a claim which is truthful, like instead of going straight to Mangawhai, if I were meeting in Whangarei, I go from Whangarei to Mangawhai. Do you want us to claim only from the place straight for both those places more? We are actually trying to save money. But I guess there is a system for you, and you might educate us, because there's no idea of getting striking of $15 or whatever, because it looks bad on the picture for the auditor.
No. So if you're entitled, under the policy, Councillor Mayor, you're entitled to claim for what you claim for on work travel, right? And that's how you claim for it, and what you claim is up to you within that policy.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
It's not about looking bad, looking good, or anything like that. Recognising though that, for example, some elected members don't claim anything because they see that as a personal cost that they're willing to bear, rather than publicly have take the expenses, and that's their choice. So the policy's there. You claim for it as you will within the remit of the policy, and that is what it is.
And so all I'm saying is, if instead of going from my house, which I normally do, I have a meeting elsewhere, I go there first, go straight to that, obviously the claim is a bit different.
Yeah, you can claim it.
That should be all right, but they
Just
shouldn't.
got to put it in your paperwork and say what it was for.
Thank you.
It's your choice.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's same or less, generally it's less.
Okay, there's only one, item I'd like to talk to you about.
Instead of two.
Make sure if you're looking to do something you think's council business, that you arrange the pass off of that before you go and do that. Otherwise you might be declined. All right? Because, you know, sometimes we want to go to a conference and stuff like that. All right, next up, item, mate. Thank you, Shereen. I think that's, Shereen, that covers it pretty good. Final one is item 8, code of conduct, independent investigators list review. And this is to be presented by Alana. Thank you, Alana.
Good afternoon, members. So I'm here with you today about the requirement for independent investigators under the Cape District Council Code of Conduct and the review process for that list. Before I start, there was a question from Councillor Vincent about whether or not we were discussing, we're not discussing the Code of Conduct. It's just provided as attachment A for us. So as outlined in the Code of Conduct adopted by Council, maintaining a list of independent investigators is a vital obligation. Investigators play an important role in handling allegations, but ensuring a fair, transparent and accountable process is followed. So back in November 2022, there was a council briefing. We discussed the council's responsibility to maintain a list. And staff also presented on the complaints process, as well as planning to release an expression of interest for investigators. So obviously there's been a little delay since then, but we're here today to review the list and to revisit that plan. While council has discretion in appointing investigators, a crucial consideration is that they have strong knowledge and experience in local government matters. Neutrality is also key. Investigators throughout proceedings need to remain neutral and gain the confidence of both parties and the wider public. So when we are considering assessing applicants, the key factors should include expertise, so they need broad knowledge and local government context. Location, so looking beyond the district, so at the wider region and even Auckland, and a collaborative approach with other Northland councils. So ideally, investigators should possess a comprehensive skill set, so public sector integrity, legal knowledge, ethical judgment, so they need to be impartial and unbiased, they should have skills in conflict resolution and mediation, and cultural competence and understanding of tikanga Māori and investigative prowess. So what's next is that we have outlined a proposed expression of interest process to ensure a broad and transparent selection of investigators, and the timeline involves notifying the expression of interest early to mid-Feb, mid-Feb now, appointing a review panel at the February council meeting, with the review panel assessing the applicants in early March and putting forward a recommended list to council for their consideration at the March meeting. And that's it from me. So.
Okay, any questions? Here's Madison.
Well expressed, Alana.
Thank you. You can all go.
It's the prize for the most concise and well understood explanation.
Okay, thank you for your attendance today, everybody, and staff. All the staff just about all gone. It's time for a beer. Closure. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thanks everybody online.
Thank you.